It is now my pleasure to be joined by three people who are not only former colleagues of mine, but also family. LATRICE Powell, Brandon Garrett, and Stephanie Young. Welcome you all, and thank you so much for making the time and creating the opportunity to have this conversation about our favorite John Lewis memories. So thank you all for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having us.
We're all together.
Yes, absolutely. So I wanted to just take a step back. You know, for the last several days, people have been celebrating John Lewis's life, commemorating him, and so much of the coverage has been focused on who he was as he walked across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, but very little attention has been paid to who John Lewis was as a legislator and in the halls of Congress. And during our tenure as the CBC staff, starting in 2011, we got to spend some time with him. And so I wanted to just share some of our favorite memories. LATRICE, I want to start with you. You, of course, worked with Congressman Lewis up until his last day on Capitol Hill as you're the deputy floor director for Speaker Nancy Pelosi. So you can definitely share current memories, but I do want us to take it back as well.
So I think the most recent memory I have of Mr. Lewis is trading pictures. So when he wasn't here, he was at his house in DC, and we would kind of trade pictures. He'd send me a picture, and I'd send him a picture, and so I got a chance to keep seeing him. And we just kind of talk about like what flowers I was going to plant or what he was planting in his garden. And so that's like the most recent memory. I think one of my most fondest memories of Mr. Lewis is when we went to Ghana. I was on the CODEL with Mr. Lewis and Speaker Pelosi and some other members of the Congressional Black Caucus. And it was mind-blowing to see the continent of Africa for the first time with Mr. Lewis. I mean, there were people, once they found out he was there, they were following us around and chanting his name. And he had been there several times, and he was just so calm, cool, and collected. But he always like took time to say, hey, how are you doing? Or, you know, isn't this special? Or, you know, just when we were having like moments and so sad, he would just kind of come by and just kind of nudge you a little bit. So I think that's my greatest memory of Mr. Lewis in the last year, which was amazing. He was so amazing to me and so many other people.
Thanks, Therese. Steph, your role for us at the time, there's a little bit of feedback, but your role for us at the time of being with the CBC was communications director. And I still say all the time, you're our internal communications strategist. And so just for a moment, if you could give us the vision of who he was, communicating who he was as a legislator and someone who we got to walk past and almost rub shoulders with really in the halls of Congress. Talk to us a little bit about the story they're not really telling on air right now.
Yeah, so, well, I feel like I have a big privilege because Mr. Lewis is my congressman. Yeah. And there's people in your life that you don't ever remember meeting. They're just there. And that was Mr. Lewis. He was at our church all the time, the church that my father pastored in Atlanta, Big Bethel AME Church on Auburn Avenue. When he was running for Congress, my father supported him in his first race. So there's those fond memories as a child, just seeing this person come and be kind and be loving. But to see him as an adult and walk the halls of Congress and walk really, beside him at times, the CBC Jobs Initiative that we did, which was an amazing undertaking that I can't believe that we did all together, and it worked out. And just being able to see him up close and personal on the ground in Atlanta during that time where Black unemployment was around 16.6%, I think, extremely high, obviously. And he just never lost the common touch, and I think that sometimes when people acquire power and they grow, into these figures, they sometimes lose themselves, and he just never did. and you always felt welcomed, always felt loving. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what people do. It really matters how they made you feel, right? And he always, I know, made us feel loved, important, special. And I would always like remind him like, oh, you know, I'm Bishop Young's daughter. And he'd be like, I know who you are. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll stop saying that. But I mean, he just always made you feel welcomed. And what I love too is that, you know, when people are telling similar stories, preaching to the chickens, all the stories that he would tell, you never got tired of hearing any of that. You were never like, okay, I heard that before. You still felt joy from hearing those stories. You could still actually physically see him in that chicken coop preaching to the chickens.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he was a good person, and good people stay with you. And I know that we're all blessed to have the opportunity to work with him, to have heard him in the CBC meetings. As those of you who don't know, CBC meetings are epic. I wish it was a reality TV show about the CBC meetings. Angela would be screaming at us because we didn't take notes.
They never took notes.
I took notes.
Brandon's notes would be like, oh, what?
It'll be one word, like tomorrow what? We don't know. But it was fun still. But one of I also got the chance to go back to Selma and walk the Edmund Pettus Bridge with him when I worked for Congressman, or the Democratic whip at the time, Steny Hoyer. And it was my niece's 18th birthday. I'll never forget this. I said, Mr. Lewis, it's my niece's 18th birthday. Can you just shoot a little video for her? And he did it. And he did it. And like, he was getting his food, okay? He was literally putting his food on his plate, and he recorded a video for my niece. So to see this person who never lost a common touch, right? And to understand the impact that he had holistically, not just on how you felt, but like the building of the African American Museum, which at the White House, I got the privilege of leading the team when it came to opening the museum. So all of these things that he's touched, his lasting legacy, you know, I know it's a sad time because we had to see him go, but also it's a triumphant time because he lived a marvelous and wonderful life. So, and I'm glad that he's always going to be my congressman. So.
Yeah.
I love that. Brandon, Steph brought up the For the People Jobs Initiative, which was a 5-city tour, and Atlanta was one of those cities. Of course, we worked with Congressman Lewis and Congressman Johnson in pulling off that jobs tour. I want to start with you with any special memories from the jobs tour with Mr. Lewis. Not all the memories, just with Mr. Lewis specifically. And I want LATRICE and Steph to chime in there too. You know, I got some as well, but I want to
I think what I learned on the jobs tour is that Mr. Lewis is a much better person than I am. As frustrated as we were, and as like it was really hot in Atlanta. We did this 5-city jobs tour. As Stephanie mentioned, Black unemployment was 16.6. Unemployment in general was like at least 10.1, something like that. And so we came with this idea to do a jobs tour, and we got to go to Atlanta, Georgia, and we got to see Mr. Lewis in his element with the people that he represents and serves. And so we had this crazy line. I mean, obviously unemployment was at its highest. And so Mr. Lewis saw that everyone was in need, and he actually took it upon himself to go outside and speak to everybody and calm them down and tell them that there are opportunities right in the door. He would bring water. He would just sit there and just be present with people. And that is something that I think a lot of us forget. Like I always forget. I know that there's an end goal and I have to get that done. So I'm just like, no, we have to get this done. We have to get these people in. I'm in a rush for no reason. And Mr. Lewis is like, let's just calm down and let's help the people. We're here during this jobs tour for the people. And he was a constant reminder of servant leadership. And he is always at first a servant to the communities he served, whether it be in Troy or whether it be in Atlanta, whether it be in Washington, D.C. And so that's from the jobs tour, that is my favorite memory of the tour overall. And that's my favorite one of my favorite memories of Mr. Lewis.
Brandon, I have to agree with you. I remember when he was like, you know, the cars are backed up all the way to the freeway, right?
Yeah.
In that moment, he was like, and the people are hot, they need water. So he's like running. We're like, wait, we can do it. He's like, no, I'm rolling up his sleeves and getting ready to do it. But I have to be honest with you, that was a favorite memory, but I had mostly only known Michael. I knew some of the personal office staff at that time. Micheline was still there. But other than that, I hadn't gotten to know until we went into communities, the personal office staff in districts for most of these members. And what I remember, I don't know if you guys remember this, we went to dinner with the district office staff the night before the Jobs Initiative job tour, and they were as remarkable, amazing, likable, affable, and warm and humble as Mr. Lewis. And I think in that moment, I really was like, this guy's personality is so contagious, it permeates his staff, right? So that was one of my favorite things, like to be that type of leader that can impact your team so that they are, you know, as warm and as calm, as you said, Brandon, calming, soothing presence in the middle of a storm and trying to make sure that we actually serve people was major. LATRICE and Steph and Brandon too, when we got back from the jobs tour in the 5 cities, of course, we had the jobs, what do we call that bill, Brandon? The CBC jobs.
It was the CBC jobs plan. It wasn't a bill, we just compared our bill. We said the Republican no jobs bill, Obama's.
We had a bill.
Legislation.
We did have a bill.
We had a bill, Brandon. But the plan first, then the bill.
Oh,
but the
for the people jobs bill. Yeah, for the people jobs bill.
Yes. So the first recommendation, y'all welcome to the CBC family. This is what we do. But first the recommendations, and I think the dope part is even after the tour, Mr. Lewis and his office were intimately engaged with the recommendations and legislating around that. What we haven't talked about as much, and Treese, I think, and for you, Steph currently works with When We All Vote and is a key part of that organization. But in addition to that, we know Mr. Lewis is known for voting rights. He didn't stop with walking across that bridge, though. He legislated. Treese, you got to witness something so profound on the House floor this year, last year, I'm sorry, in 2019, when HR 4 made it to the floor. Can you talk to us about what you saw with Mr. Lewis being able to chair with the passage of that bill?
So I think that whenever anyone gets in the chair to chair, there have only been maybe 11,000 people who've been members of Congress and even fewer people who've actually got a chance to chair or preside as Speaker Pro Tem. So we had Mr. Lewis come in and he was just like, oh, I haven't done this in such a long time and I'm so nervous. And I'm just like, in my mind, I'm thinking, how can you be nervous about anything? And he was just like, oh, I want to make sure that I get it right. And so so we're in this room and we're talking, and then he's talking to the parliamentarian, and then it's time for him to go up. And now he had just told me he was nervous. And I mean, the moment his foot hit the rostrum, I guess the nerves were gone, and he was perfect. He had his own flair, he had his own style, and most importantly, he just made everyone feel like it was a heavy moment, but it was also a joyous moment. So we were all just like, oh my God. So people were like looking around saying, it's Mr. Lewis, he's in the chair, because he had not gotten in the chair since we took the House back. And so they were like, oh, there he goes. And so everyone was just like so quiet. And he didn't have to like work extra hard to like bring attention back to the chair. They were all just so caught up in the moment. And I think for me, I never thought that I would get to see something like that, right? There's so many other moments that have happened on the floor, and you're just like, oh, that's cool, or oh, that's great. But then that, I felt like that was history. So it was fantastic to see him there. And he knew he did a good thing that day. And it was great. It was awesome to be there.
I love that too, because, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but there's also, so we actually did an enrollment correction, and now HR 4 is actually named the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. So that was amazing to actually be there and to witness that, and to have everyone realize it was happening. You know, there was so much talk about, oh, we should do this and we should do that, and to like just be a part of the team that's like, okay, how do you make this happen? Oh, it's that simple? Okay. And to make it happen, and to Mr. Kildee, who was a longtime friend of his, who had been doing his proxy voting for him, I was able to put him in the chair, and he was able to do that. And so he was just like, you don't know what this means to me. And, you know, maybe there were tears, maybe there weren't tears, but it was definitely a big moment as well, to name it after Mr. Lewis.
Absolutely. HR 4 now named the John Lewis Voting Rights. Is it Voting Rights Advancement Act or Voting Rights Act?
Voting Rights Act.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Mm.
So we can't leave without talking about something very important. Steph brought up CBC Wednesdays. The CBC lunch is very, very important, I think, to our memories of Mr. Lewis. Steph, because you like sauce so much, why don't you put the sauce on it for us and tell us why the CBC lunches on Wednesday for us was so special with Mr. Lewis.
Yeah. You know what? I have to preface this by saying I really do love Black people and the way that we are.
No
and
matter what.
is the blacketiest thing you could be a part of. It does not matter we're with members of Congress.
Okay.
Black. And it feels like a family. It really does feel like a family lunch or dinner, even though it's
like a reunion. It's like a reunion every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday.
And
I think it's the time they can be themselves.
Yeah, and it's like the fact that we eat soul food, and it's this moment where it's like we are completely Black and we are here together, and it's such an inspiring moment to hear all of these brilliant people around the table talking about issues that impact our country and that will impact our country for years and years to come, and their experiences, right? So like they're sharing all of their wisdom as to why they are going to make certain decisions. They're working together, they're disagreeing, they're communicating. So there's so many life lessons in that moment. And you all know, like when certain members talk, others members kind of quiet down, and Mr. Lewis was that member, right? So when he would speak on an issue, people would be quiet and they would listen to what he had to say. And he could always tie in what happened in the past to this moment in which we're living now, and kind of really bring back that perspective in that moment. So I mean, I will always love our CBC lunches. I kind of wish I could just still, hey, can we come in just for a lunch to like the whole staff to sit around and like there should be an alumni moment for all of us.
Right.
There's something so special about that, and to be in essence, someone of their foot soldiers, right? To like take what they want to do, and move the ball forward on that in a way. And he provided that leadership, and no matter who's in a group, no matter how senior experienced people are, everybody needs a leader, right? And Mr. Lewis was a leader, and he was a leader in such a gentle and fair way. And I don't know if you want to talk about this story, Angela, but I remember one of the things he said in the meeting, you actually put it on your Instagram the other day, like a little saying he said, because he was very nonviolent. But I can't even remember who he was talking about. But he mentioned how he wanted to do a nonviolent slap on someone. And we all like cracked up, and obviously we'll remember that moment forever. And
So what I thought Steph was going to bring up, she's right about his leadership in the meetings, but more often than not, Mr. Lewis would come to the meetings when they were over. So Brandon, please tell us why. What was happening at the end of the lunch? That's when we got to eat, and Mr. Income, it would come out.
It's just us.
Right.
Yes,
and it was always Michael, his chief of staff, and Mr. Lewis would be in at the end, and he'd always sort of sit there and eat with us and sort of just talk about the meeting and what we could do, and sometimes just joke around with us. Because before the meeting starts, there's all this pressure to make sure everything's set up right and make sure, like, one member is going to talk about their finance bill, and do you know enough about their finance bill or the communications plan, or, just are we everything in ethics or whatnot, just making sure that we're together. So there's all this pressure beforehand, and we're just kind of sitting there, just paying attention, learning, observing. And then at the end of it, we get to relax, and Mr. Lewis relaxed with us, and he would eat, he would have his chicken, and he would have his lemonade.
His sweet tea.
Definitely sweet.
Yeah, now I wish I was there the one meeting when they, because our boss, Mr. Cleaver, is a vegetarian, but he always knew to make sure that he had that.
Salmon.
And put salmon, I'm sorry. And isn't that like his granola stuff, right?
Yeah.
But he always knew to still have that Gates barbecue there and that fried chicken there. LATRICE was there when they brought in, when they had the vegan meal or something. Sorry, I'm off of that one.
I didn't know about that. But yes, but all I want to talk about was how Mr. Lewis used to come in and eat with us later. And we had a bunch of interns who had the great opportunity to learn from, almost figuratively sit at Mr. Lewis's knee. So, I mean, we've just been tremendously blessed, y'all. And I just wanted to take this moment, one, to look at your faces because I miss all of you. I'm proud of each of you, and I'm so grateful that we could share that part of Mr. Lewis's legacy together. It was a game changer, you know, to be able to walk with an icon and knowing how much he changed for us before we were even born, and then to be able to learn from him is just such a powerful thing. So I just really wanted to take this moment and to love on y'all after, you know, all of the memorial services and arrangements have happened, and he's, you know, lying in state in the state capitol of Alabama and in the the DC Capitol, the nation's Capitol building. It was just important that we have a moment to humanize him and to talk about who he was as a legislator and as someone we got to see in the Cannon House office building. You know, walking down the street near his row house in DC, and, you know, eating lunch at the CBC with him. And Steph being like, it's a press moment for the water handout. At the
It was. Angela, can I just bring up one more thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, I think that, like, since I work now in voting and voting organization when we all vote, I think it's just so incredibly important for us as African Americans to really recognize the sacrifice that he made for us. And I know that from research, a lot of younger people don't necessarily always kind of feel that connection of people who fought for you. But we just lost two people who fought for us, Reverend C.P. Vivian and John Lewis. And you know, we're coming up on the most important election, not just of our lifetime, but for our children's children, right? Generations to come. And it can't be lost on us the impact that he made when it came to fighting, even to his last breath, for our right to vote. And we cannot take any of that for granted. I don't care if it's good messaging or bad messaging. I think it's super important that we all remember that and know that people sacrificed for us to even have the privilege to say, I don't want to vote. Okay. So I just really hope that, like, if you don't get anything from this moment, just know that this man, literally until his dying day, has fought for you to have a voice, and you got to use it.
I love that. That is what he would call good trouble, necessary trouble. And the best way to make a difference, not only in our country, but in the world, is to serve people with a good old nonviolent slap. And that's how we can do that. So thank you all so very much. I'm so grateful to spend this time with you and to have spent the amount of time that we've spent together learning, growing, and serving the people. There's just not a better person that could have led us. So to our servant leader, to our hero, to Mr. Lewis, we thank you, we honor you, and we will keep getting into good trouble. I love you guys. Thank you.
Love you too.
Bye. Love you guys.
Bye.